This happened a long time ago, so there's likely no way to prove anything at this point. I need to give a little backstory before I get into the incident. I've always been exceptionally good at multiple choice tests. I wasn't a great student. I usually ended up with a B and C average, but because I read a lot, and I'm a good puzzle solver, I could usually ace my tests, and get away with doing no homework, and still end up with a passing or even a decent grade. One exception to this was my history teacher. She was more clever than I, and her multiple choice tests often had 2 or even 3 plausible answers out of the 4 to 5 choices. Hers was the only class I failed, just barely, but I was in luck. At the time, it was possible to redo a single failing grade by taking a standardized test from the government. I took this test, without studying, and got a B+. So that was substituted for my actual grade. High school tests were fairly easy in general, but standardized tests for me were a complete breeze. Well, I had this particular teacher for homeroom. Let's call her Miss Karen Van Biock, Miss Karen for short. She was the coach of the cheerleader squad. This becomes important later. One day, on the way to homeroom class, I sprained my ankle, quite badly. I hobbled with one leg and the rails up the stairs to homeroom. I told Miss Karen that I needed a pass to the nurse because I had just badly sprained my ankle. Our school required a pass signed by a teacher to visit the nurse. I imagine things have probably changed by now. Let me know in the comments. I had experience with sprained ankles already. They were the bane of my existence, and I knew this was bad. She looked at me and said, "I don't give nurse passes or bathroom passes." This wasn't even a real class, where I would miss a lecture. It was homeroom. I looked at her with my jaw open, but given how I knew she was a complete tool already, I didn't argue. Instead I limped over to my desk and sat while the pain grew and my anger grew higher. When the bell rang, I had to climb yet another flight of stairs to my Latin teacher, who gave me a nurse pass immediately. The nurse took one look at my pants, didn't even ask me to pull up my jeans, because she could see that my ankle was the size of a grapefruit. She gave me a crutch and sent me home immediately. I had to take the city bus. This was before cell phones, and we didn't have a car anyway, and no money for a taxi or something. I managed thanks to the crutch. When I got home, I let my dad know what happened. I thought I was mad, but he turned red. He helped me bandage up my ankle, the whole time his face as red as Rudolph's nose. He then asked if I would be okay for a few hours, and I said yes, and he left our apartment without a word. When he got back, he told me my teacher wasn't going to be giving me trouble anymore. Being a kid, I decided to test his theory. When I hobbled into class on my crutches the next day, we had a pair at home. In the middle of homeroom, I crouched up to the desk and asked Miss Karen if I could go to the bathroom. She put on this exaggerated obsequious expression and said, "Sure, Jim, you can do whatever you want." That's not my name, just for illustration. Mission accomplished, which leads me finally to the title of this post. When the time came around for standardized tests, we were all sent to various large classrooms that were not our normal rooms for the testing. I found myself in a room with me, about 5 or 6 other honor students, and a room full of cheerleaders and football players. Guess who the proctor for the test was? If guessed it was Miss Karen, you get a gold star. The only instruction she gives for the test is this. She tells us to fill out our names, using a pencil, but not to press too hard so we didn't damage the test. She also told us not to bubble in our names. She would do that for us, and said once we had done that she would start the timer and we could take the test. I looked down at my test. There was a section on the front page that said, "For administrator use only." But the part where we were to fill in our names was clearly written for the student to fill it in, and the instructions clearly said to do so. I smelled a rat, and I am perfectly capable of bubbling in my name, so I filled it out myself, ignoring her directive. She saw me doing this, and said, "I told you not to do that." I pointed out that I was merely following the instructions on the test. She got a mean look on her face, and said, "Fine if you wanna fail." Then she walked off. We got back the results. I knew I had aced it, and sure enough, I had missed a grand total of 2 questions, and was somewhere in the 99th percentile. But I do wonder how many poor honor students found out that they were dumber than they thought, and how many cheerleaders found out they were geniuses. What do you think about this? Tell us in the comment. Like this video and hit the subscribe button for more real-life experiences videos.